Hello, it's Nancy from Tales of the Ravenous Reader, and look who I have here, the lovely Lesley Livingston. It's been years in the making, absolute years. I think at least about 8.
Since 2009.
Yeah.
That's when Wonder Strange came out.
Yeah. That was like one of my very first fantasies that I read and absolutely loved it. And since then, I've bought all of her books.
I haven't bribed her at all, I swear.
She hasn't at all. And so I'm so very excited to see her because I purposely flew up to Portland to see her because she's never been near me. I don't think that you've ever come down to the States, huh?
I hadn't. This is actually my first tour down in the U.S. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I've done tours in Canada, but this is my first go south of the border. That's it.
That's my question.
Don't wreck the joint.
So once I found out that you were coming up this way, and I thought, well, there's no way that I cannot see you. So I made arrangements to come up, and then my lovely co-blogger was like, you're crazy, because we just had an event yesterday.
Yeah, I heard that.
Yeah, and then we're having an event tomorrow, so I thought, well, I can squeeze this in, I could do this, and so I had to do it. And unfortunately, my storage unit was broken into, and
I heard about that.
All of my books were stolen, so I had to replace them. So thank you, Books A Million, and all those other book places that I was able to find the books and have them replaced so that I can have them signed. So, and see Lesley here because she's here with the Penguin Teens Tour, the Slaydies, right? Is it Slaydies?
The Penguinslaydies.
Slaydies, yeah.
Yes. Hashtag Slaydies, which is like Slaydies and also Slay Dies.
Slay Dies.
It's kind of a theme. Works sort of really well for all of our books.
So, and the reason that you're part of this tour is because of this lovely book right here. Okay.
My Best Man of White.
The Valiant. Yes.
Yeah.
And so I was so very happy to read this. I was so excited for it because it is this. Let's see if I can get the words out. So loved it because I love the world that was in it. It's mesmerizing and it's brutal. The main character, she's a badass female. The supporting characters are memorable. You just love all of them. And
thank you.
I wanted to know, where did you get the inspiration for this novel, and what kind of research went into it? Because you had to have some research.
Yeah, I have always been fascinated with ancient civilizations, the ancient Celts, classical societies, Greek, Roman, Egyptian. I've always, I had no friends when I was a kid. I spent a lot of time in the library. I don't know. I started reading a lot of historical fiction and biographies and National Geographic magazines and all that kind of stuff. I was particularly fascinated with Greece and Rome, but it's the Celtic societies really got a hold on me. I think when I read Pauline Gedge's The Eagle and the Raven way back when, and it was the story of Boudica. And Boudica was a Celtic queen in 1st century AD who basically, when Rome was invading, gathered together an army and withstood the might of Rome for a decent amount of time. It all ended horribly because, those things kind of did back then. But she was this really strong warrior woman, and I started to get really interested in sort of the Celtic cultures and how the women would fight alongside the men. And that, like, without really, it didn't make a difference to them. It was like they would just go into battle with their men, and it didn't matter, male, female, if you can fight and you wanted to fight, there you go. For the Romans, it freaked them out, because Roman women don't fight. But they were conquering a bunch of people who had female warriors, the Amazons, which were like the Scythians and the Celts, and some of the northern tribes who would have, sort of the early equivalent of shield maidens. And it occurred to me, I guess at some point, I don't know, when I was reading all this stuff, that if they were taking the men from these tribes as slaves and putting them in the arena as gladiators, would the same thing happen with the women? And there's very little archaeological and historical evidence that there were female gladiators, but there is some. There's these tantalizing little bits and pieces, and there's a few references to it in the actual written histories of the time. And then there's one or two physical pieces of evidence. There's a carving that's got 2 obviously female gladiators on it, and they've got swords and shields, and they're fighting against each other, and they're named Amazona and Achillea. which is actually where I came up with the names for the two female gladiator schools in the book. And there was recently, like within the last 15 or 20 years, there was an archaeological find in Britain of a grave that they discovered it was a Roman British grave, and when they excavated it, they found all these grave goods that the scholars said, well, this is obviously the grave of the gladiator. And then they looked at the remains of the occupant, and they were like, oh, except it's a chick. Clearly not a gladiator. And I was well, why isn't it a gladiator? Because it's a woman. And recently, scholarly opinion has started to shift in towards the fact that, yeah, that was probably a female gladiator. And there's some other things. There was a statue that I'll probably talk about ad nauseum later on at the event. There was a female statue that was discovered that originally people would find the bather, but in fact is probably also a female gladiator. So that stuff all kind of fed into my imagination, and I knew that Julius Caesar was like he was crazy for gladiators. He had stables of them, and they were a political thing as well as an entertainment thing. So that just all fed into the story, and then I did a ton of research. For it afterwards.
There was a lot of research and very well done.
Thank you.
And what I also enjoyed was that bond of sisterhood that was present throughout the novel, and I think that was like my favorite bit of it. Yeah.
That was really important for me to include because the romance aspect of young adult fiction is always very intriguing, very nice, but for this particular story, it takes a bit of a backseat because Fallon's journey is one from a very sort of solitary figure who thinks she can rely on herself and no one else. And when she comes into the situation where she has to get to know these other women and survive based on how she interacts with them, she develops these bonds almost in spite of herself and realizes that she needs to rely on other people, and especially these other girls that she comes into contact with. And I loved exploring the relationship that develops between them. You know, both her friends and her rivals.
Yes.
Yeah. So that was fun to play with.
Working on next.
Well, I am actually.
Are you at liberty to tell us?
Yeah, I'm not going to be super coy because it was announced a couple of weeks ago. I'm actually working on book 2 in the series, which is called The Defiant. Yeah, and I'm very excited about it.
And when is that slated to come out? Around next year, about this time?
Next year, around about this time, yeah.
Yeah. Very excited.
You want to pick that up?
Yes.
Maybe.
Also, always, I pick up everything that she has, and I will show a video later of all that I have. You would not believe all that I have. I think I have 10.
Wow.
Because I have your Ever Never.
Yeah.
Which is where we did where Boudica was introduced. In
That's exactly. Yeah, I wrote about Boudica in the Never books.
And I was going to ask about that if that was what inspired them to have this one.
Yeah, I mean those are really fun books because there's a paranormal element to them. There's the time travel thing, but they're kind of dear to my heart too. But there's that paranormal element, and they're a lot lighter in tone, a lot time travel.
Yeah.
But that's sort of what got me really thinking about getting into writing a historical book. And in this one, it was interesting because I'd never written a book before that I could not get my characters into or out of trouble without using magic. So I was like, no, that's pretty much just swords and brains and guts with this one. So
awesome.
I'm so glad you liked it.
I enjoyed it very much. And thank you for writing such amazing books. It's been such a pleasure reading all of them. And
thank you for reading them.
For this one. Of course. Forever a fangirl. So thank you so much. So,
Battle hug. Battle hug. Battle hug. Battle hug. All right.